I'll mute and John do it. So this is John Zurst with the Alliance Insurance Agency in Mankato.
I appreciate you guys. We'll take a few minutes and speak here. I'll talk to you obviously about insurance and then just a few risk management wise here. Things you can do to make sure you're protecting yourself in all aspects anyways. Anytime you small business, you're going to want to protect things. Obviously, insurance pretty inexpensive from that avenue, but kind of tell people when we meet, you can go broke buying anything and everything, right? You kind of want to assess your individual risk. What do you have tied into your small business? For you guys, there isn't typically a storefront, right? You're doing stuff from home. It's going to be product. It's going to be the biggest concern is liability sides of things. Just a few big ones to touch on that we kind of want to make sure to discuss anyways. What can hurt you? I would make a list. What potential things could go wrong in your business that could cause you to lose out on an economic benefit? You're obviously doing this, A, because you enjoy producing stuff, but B, you want to make a little money while you're doing it, right? That's the end all be all, is have some fun, but earn a little extra cash in your pocket. So I would figure out what can affect my bottom line, what could happen to me, make a little list, kind of figure out, all right, so if I have A, B, C, and D that could affect my company, all right, how can we alleviate A, B, and C, D, whatever those things are from my bottom line? Typically, for your small business, the liability side. Somebody takes product, eats, gets sick. The biggest one we're seeing right now, it's Minnesota. It's cold. You're talking about snow and ice on sidewalks. I would be willing to bet that individuals are coming to your residence to pick up a product. Well, I would be looking at making sure you're doing just the little things of properly mitigating any kind of risk about slipping and falling, different avenues in there. One sec here. So that's the one big one. The second biggest thing I say is just the liability in general of something you maybe don't consider, you don't think about on your auto policy, the car insurance. If you're using a vehicle to transport goods commercially, does your auto policy pick up that particular coverage? Are you covered in the event of an accident because you're using it commercially? That was just brought up to me before I got on here with another client. So that would be one thing that, again, making my list to make sure that am I properly covered with any events that I'm taking care of, transporting things from A to B and such there. Really Jennifer talked about the ESCO policy, the RAM Mutual. It's something that provides $1 million in liability. It's covering slips and falls at your residence, covering somebody that gets sick, taking products. You're going to shows, you're in parking lots, things like that, wherever your event is, you're protecting your interests, you're protecting yourself there. Like I say, though, the biggest thing to me is making a list for you guys, figuring out what could go wrong, what is potential negatives, and making sure that you can have some sort of coverage there to protect you. Do we have, I apologize, not a whole, true information. A lot easier if anybody's kind of base off of that. If anybody wanted to jump on and ask any kind of questions you may have, it'd probably be a lot easier to give you different examples and or answer those for you.
So here's a question for you. With the policy as it is, you said it's $1 million coverage, and you've talked a lot about at the home. But what, as a cottage food producer in the state of Minnesota, we're allowed to sell at farmers markets, and like when we're making deliveries and that type of thing, we can attend vendor fairs and that type of thing, depending on if it's a community event or not. How does our insurance help us that way? Are we covered?
Yeah, so when you're talking about you're going to these events, they're typically requesting a copy of a policy to show that there's liability. And this policy would do that for you as well. For us, the only thing that we can't provide or help you with is if you're not producing a product at home. So if you rent a commercial kitchen space and are producing that product out of there, but I could produce it out of my home, and I could go to in Mankato here, we've got the River Hills Mall, go to our mall and sit in a show there, I'm covered with the liability at that particular event. So yes, it does not have to necessarily, you can go to events, you can go to places, you are covered as long as you are producing the product from home for you. I see a question that popped up as far as cost. So cost itself, with that $1 million in liability there, the product does include $5,000 in coverage for what we call business personal property. It's equipment. We're talking mixers, different things you're using to produce your product there. Basically with that cost, the $1 million liability, the $5,000 for that equipment, you're looking at $200 for a year. You can pay that one time a year. You can set that up on a monthly payment. So it's pretty inexpensive for what you're getting and protecting yourself with.
And if you set it up on a monthly payment, is the premium a little higher then?
If you set it up on monthly payment, as long as you do it on auto pay from a checking account, it is the same $200. It's just $16. What's that? $16.67, I believe, a month.
I don't know. I paid mine in advance, but yeah, I have no idea.
You can do it both ways. It does, as long as you set up on auto pay, it doesn't affect that $200 bottom line for you.
So what happens if you decide to, is this going to differ if you become an LLC?
Become an LLC? No. So I have the opportunity, and I've done this on numerous other ones, where we can write a policy in an individual name, and then you went through and you created a DBA, created an LLC, you created something for that business. I can go in and just manually change the policy to put that LLC name in there, or put that business name in for you. I mean, that's no problem. It's just a communication to myself and allowing me to then make that change.
Here's another question. So if you decide, do you only cover Minnesota, or do you cover other states as well? Do you know if Ram covers other states?
Good question. Right now, that product is only available in Minnesota. Not to say that maybe another carrier in a different state maybe has something similar, but for us right now, that is just available in Minnesota.
And so if I have this insurance, and let's say, so for example, I know there's producers that produce stuff in Wisconsin, cottage food producers, and our Department of Agriculture will allow them to cross the state line and sell at a farmer's market here. So let's say that I have my business and I cross the state line and I've done everything I need to do, and I'm selling in Fargo, for example, and it's allowed by law. Will my insurance follow?
Yes. So as long as you reside here and you're producing, for us, as long as you're producing the product here, I could go into Fargo. I could, go down into Iowa to sell that particular product. But the biggest thing for our policy to cover you is that you reside in Minnesota to take it out, and then that you're producing from your home here in Minnesota, but you could go elsewhere to sell said product.
Somebody asked about how we contact you for coverage. I know we have you on the website, plus it's on our PowerPoint presentation from our conference, but I don't know if maybe, can I just give them your email, because I have a copy of that as well, and your phone number?
Sure, that works just fine, and that works for me. And no problem handling that.
So somebody asked if the insurance policy is similar to Flip, and this is, I can maybe answer that, because I don't think you can answer that question, but when I had State Farm insurance, and so then I went and talked to John, and I had him give me a quote. I had to give me a copy of what the policy would cover, and then I took it to my previous agent and had him compare it, and I think you might have even compared it as well. Yep. And then that's the best way to make the comparison. Am I correct in saying that, John?
Easiest way. I mean, that, like you just said, the nice thing is being able to look at them side by side to make sure that you're not missing something. Yeah, that's absolutely one of the biggest things there. Yes. Sorry, getting office phone calls in here. I changed that. Just do not disturb. Apologies.
No worries. Somebody here says, watch out, John. You might get inundated with new clients.
You know, it's funny you say that. And you made the comments. I know Karen Peterson, I think, was one of the first ones. I just looked recently here, and I think I've done about 93 of them now, you know, in the last 4 years. So it's definitely, the last few years, it's taken off a lot more, but seeing a lot of growth, which is great. That means you guys are taking on new roles, creating new businesses, and that's awesome to see.
Well, we give everybody your name. Do you know much about Flip?
About Flip, I do not, unfortunately. That'd be one that I'd have to do a little research and a little intel on. I certainly can do that. And whoever has that question, or if there's a specific individual, give me that contact. I could do some research and then I could reach out. I mean, that's no problem.
They were wondering if your insurance was the same as that.
Yeah, I'll just jump. Yeah, I can, like I said, I'll reach research.
I did a little research on Flip, Shelley, and Flip is not the same as Ram Mutual. Ram Mutual is something different. It's a different insurance agency, but I think maybe similar coverages and stuff, but the costs are different too.
That's what Kathy Zeman always tells everybody to use.
I don't know if it was Flip or who, but one of them through the farmers market, they only insure in the state. That's why that was one of the big things I wanted to find out if I followed out of state, because you just never know. I have my own insurance policy in place, but do you have any general liability advice about selling food to customers with dietary needs? I bake gluten-free and vegan and wonder if there are any things I can do to protect myself.
You know, you say and protect yourself, the biggest thing I'm guessing is just that you want to list what you're putting into the products, producing maybe a product label that you can put on there. You know, there isn't a whole lot you could really do other than literally making some sort of a label that you can stick onto that is showing this is what I'm using. That way it's up to their discretion for their dietary needs of knowing what's in there, what they can't eat, can't consume, things like that.
So what is the deductible then for everything?
So kind of like, so deductible, with anything with a liability, there is no deductible. So look at it kind of the common one or the easiest one for people to grasp is auto insurance, because everyone has auto insurance. If I'm driving a vehicle, I run through a red light and I hit you, there is no deductible to cover your injuries. The liability is built into my policy to cover you. This is the same concept. The liability that's on the policy, there is no deductible for that, because I'm going out to protect those people that got injured on your property, got sick for consuming something, whatever that liability concern was, there's no deductible. But your business equipment, you have a house fire and that equipment that's damaged, then you would have a deductible. And the minimum one we offer is $500. And that's what we put on all these policies here. That's included.
One of the questions somebody had, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine.
One of the questions somebody had was, is there any way to increase the liability dollar amount for equipment? Can they increase it from $5,000?
Yes. So again, that's what comes included at no extra cost to you. So we can go up as high, honestly, as high as you would like. You just are going to pay a little bit more for each, increment that you're looking at. But absolutely, that's not a problem. I'll give you literally just before I jumped on, that same question was asked. Going from $5,000 to $15,000 cost the individual $15 a year. So there was not much of a cost associated to that, but that was a question that was just asked a half hour ago.
Here's a question from Mary Jo. It says, I'm a DBA. Does insurance protect me and my assets? comparable to being an LLC? I think what she's maybe asking is, since I'm a DBA, I'm a sole proprietor. So if I have insurance, does that insure just my business, or will it help me with my personal stuff too? Or should I have an umbrella on top of that?
Well, the best, I mean, truthfully, set up an LLC. I mean, because you're differentiating your individual aspects from the business. Okay. If I do not have an LLC, I'm using an individual name, I'm using that DBA, and something happens. Let's say that it's so extreme that it's over this $1 million. I am putting at risk anything individually that I have asset wise. You know, that is the advantageous part about separating individual and LLC, having that not common ground there.
And you said, go ahead.
I have a quick question. You were saying that you should check out your insurance to make sure it's covering for your vehicle when you're transporting your product, like say to a farmer's market and stuff. Does your insurance cover that, or is it best to go back to my other insurance company and just see if that's something that needs to be added?
The reason that I bring that up is that every insurance carrier operates a little differently on the liability side. Some insurance carriers do not care if you're using the vehicle for commercial use. It could be one time a year. It could be, you know, all day. They don't care. Sometimes you have to, as an agent, ask the question and specify it in an application that I am using it for strictly personal use. Sometimes it's commercial, things like that. I would just hate for you to all of a sudden go from somebody that did not own a business, that it was just a personal vehicle, that I'm now all of a sudden owning this business, and maybe once a month I'm dropping off an order. What happens if I happen to run a light or a stop sign, hit someone, kill someone? I mean, you don't want to look extreme, but typically it's those big extreme ones where they're going to go back through your auto policy and ask the question, what were you actually using the vehicle for? What were you doing in that time of that accident? Well, your policy states that any business use may not cover you on the liability side. Well, if I have no coverage there, then what happens to me and my business? You know, for the small amount of money I'm making off of this, I just lost, you know, you could potentially lose a lot more. It is my for you. But this policy I offer does not cover anything liability wise in the vehicle. So that does come back to your auto policy in that circumstance. Hopefully that kind of answers.
Yeah, so you would want to ask your insurance company, and if it doesn't cover it, then you probably want to adding it to it or look at other options.
Right. Just you want to be safe. That's the biggest thing, right? You're minimizing risk, making sure that those small things that just can't affect you in a large scale potentially.
So do you have any insurance companies that you write for that would cover you if you do some of your work out of a commercial kitchen?
Yes, we do. It's a little bit different, typically a little bit different premium. Yes. But yeah, we do have, so for our agency, we have 9 different companies. We have 7 of them that will do what you're asking out of a commercial kitchen. Again, that dependent on if you have other needs, but typically that kind of base policy, if you will, is anywhere from about $350 to $400 a year. So a little bit more, you know, premium annually, but it's covering a different risk than that production out of your home.
If you have questions, you can unmute and ask John as well, guys. I don't know if I've seen them all in the chat.
There was one in there about adding delivery. I saw that. Yes, some carriers you can add that onto an auto policy. Again, some just in general, they won't offer that on a personal policy. So again, yeah, absolutely. Just reach out to, you know, your current agent and wherever that auto policy is, just to make sure and be safe.
Joseph, is there a cap on coverage for equipment? Example, if there's a $12,000 piece of equipment, is there a higher tier to cover more?
A cap for an individual item,
What-
probably. So at this time, there's not any kind of cap for an individual item. You know, that very well could change down the road, but right now, if you had a $15,000 piece of equipment that you're using out of the home there for the business, as long as we list the correct value for you, you're covered. There's not any kind of limitation to that.
Okay.
If you currently have insurance through somewhere else and you want to switch over, would it be a better idea to wait until your current insurance is over and then switch, or can you do that like whenever?
So 99% of insurance policies, you have the right as a consumer to cancel and start a new one, or you could switch at any point in time. There are some policies where they state on the policy itself. So if you have a copy, if you read through, typically it's on the first page. Just look for anything that says earned premium. If it says earned premium and it matches with what you're supposed to pay in a year, that would distinguish saying that if you left early, you do not get any kind of credit back. Typically, though, you could leave at any point. If you paid in front for a year, things like that, you can get a credit back, and that isn't an issue. Like I say, it's very rare that you see that, but it is possible to have that kind of exception, essentially.
I have a question, since you brought up the house fire thing.
Yep.
Should we take so for example, I obviously have homeowners insurance, and I obviously have a lot of baking stuff that I use just for my business, but there are some things I commingle. Like I have 3 ovens. It's just my husband and I now at home, so I probably use it more for baking than I do that. Which insurance piece is going to cover which?
So typically, like in that scenario, you're saying it could be used for both. I mean, really, you can use that with your homeowners. And the reason I would say you can use it with your homeowners is that you're going to have more coverage on some of that stuff included. You don't have to add all this extra stuff to the business policy, right? You're not paying an extra premium there where it's included on that homeowners. Now, if I have something that I am solely using for business related events, that is the stuff that I really want to make sure that I've got documented for the point.
And so here's something else, and I think I'm going to do this because we did this once before. Tell me if this is still a good practice or not. I'm just thinking now, and you actually know my son, so I mean,
Sure.
you know, like I have 3 kids, they're all older, and yada yada. And I think you know my daughter. But the whole thing is we used to take videos of all of our stuff for our homeowners every once in a while, just because if there was ever a dispute. And now I'm thinking, when I joke about having a walk-in closet, I do have a walk-in closet. My walk-in closet for my baking stuff is my daughter's old bedroom, literally shelving all the way around. Would you recommend doing videos and pictures?
Yeah, and I do tell that about anybody that I deal with. And that's not just on business side, that's on a homeowner side too. I actually just did mine last week. You know, I got an 11-year-old daughter that seems to inherit department stores around Christmas time, right? Good time for me to go back through and kind of, it's a 2-minute quick video. I'm not pulling out every drawer. I'm not looking at everything, but at least I've got a big picture of what I've got, right? You know, same type of thing. If you have like an Excel spreadsheet, maybe going of receipts of what you've spent money on this equipment, that will work just as fine as you taking a video. You know, so for the business side of things, that might be a good practice, and it's a good thing come tax time typically as well for you. So, and that would be another way to look at that as well.
Yeah, I just thought of that because I lost my wedding ring for about 18 months in my house, and I did find it. It was in a sewing box. Most people use a jewelry box, or I don't. And I literally had to go back to Exclusively Diamonds, the dealer in town, because I knew that they had put a new crown on it, or whatever you call the center. I think we've been married 30 years, and I had left it there for a year or two. So when I told them I'd lost it, they kind of chuckled, but I hadn't taken pictures forever. So I just thought about it. I bet I need to do that with my baking stuff too. Just a quick video with my cell phone really quick, and yeah.
Good practice to have, for sure. Definitely a good practice to have.
John, can you clarify for me for a minute what the equipment coverage does for us? I didn't quite catch that.
Sure. Yeah, kind of what we just talked about. If you're using something solely to produce, a product that, if it's strictly for the business, if it's like the big one that I've been told a lot of times are mixers and different things like that. If I'm using this and it's only for the business, and I'd say I have a house fire, or I'm on a vacation, my house got burglarized and all my stuff got stolen, right? What that equipment coverage is going to be there for you. I mean, that's going to be very rare that it truly gets used in a claim, truthfully. But it is there. Typically, it's going to be a fire. Minnesota, it's going to be a tornado, something like that happen. And we'll throw in theft because that is unfortunately a third option that you would see. But it's really just trying to protect the equipment that you're using to produce the product out of the home for you.
The equipment replacement cost when there's a loss like that.
Yep.
And and I'm sorry, I was following along, but then I think I got lost along the way here. If I have an oven or a mixer that's exclusive for business use and it causes a fire in my house that causes a loss, does the business policy then pick up, or it's either or?
Yes. So if you're saying that oven is exclusive to the business, yes, that is going to be something that the liability on the policy would cover for the cost of that house fire in that circumstance there. Now, one that I was going to talk on just before we get going here towards the end. The other one, ask about homeowners, whoever you have, because we're just starting to see this now in Minnesota with Progressive. So if you have Progressive home products, they don't allow any kind of in-home businesses. So I would make sure that you ask your agent on that one too. But if you're, like you say, if you have a fire in the house, you're using that oven solely for the business, it's a business related item, our liability, that $1 million liability would then come back in that circumstance as far as coverage there for you to touch.
Thank you.
John, I have a question.
Yep.
If does your insurance cover, I know you said it covers for sales out of the house and that kind of stuff. Does it cover like at farmers markets? Let's say my tent blows into my neighbor's tent and it wrecks their car or wrecks their tent or whatever. Does your insurance cover it? Is that part of the liability insurance?
Yeah, that will be part of the liability, in that circumstance. I know it's not very common, but it does happen. But yes, that would be something that would be your item that you're, responsible for at that farmer's market that gets away from you. Yes, you would be from the policy be covered underneath that liability there. That's 100% why it's there for you, to protect you in those circumstances.
Thank you.
Yep.
John, are you okay if I put your phone number here in the message box as well?
Doesn't bother me any.
Okay.
Get calls all the time. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
I know last summer there was a huge storm that affected an art fair at Ely or in Ely. And a lot of the displays and everything like that were destroyed. If there was a severe storm at an art fair or a craft fair or a farmer's market, would your stand and all the supplies and materials that you're using at that farmer's market be covered under this policy?
So the thing that the supplies, yes, that would be, they would classify those supplies underneath, the tables, things like that, underneath that equipment, that business personal property, that type of thing. Again, that would be in a circumstance where you'd be subject to that deductible, right? The $500. I'll give you, let's say I make salsa, I've got salsa on the table. the product that you created would not, the actual product itself would not be covered, but it's the equipment, it would be the tools, it would be the other things that are associated to that. That would be
Like-
equipment.
So the
Like-
salsa itself wouldn't be covered, but would the jars and stuff be
jar-
covered since that's actual?
Correct. The jars themselves, yeah.
But like the table and the tent and all that stuff would,
That would be classified as your equipment. That's your business. Yep. And you're just subject to that deductible at that point, but yes, it's covered.
okay. And what about that are stolen?
Same concept, 100% same concept. It's whatever you have for that limit for coverage, you're just up to that, you know, if I have the base 5,000, had 5,000 stolen, I'm just paying the first 500. We're writing you a check for $4,500.
Okay.
So if I
Are
drop
there
a
like-
$500 wedding cake, the only thing that would be covered would be the pan.
There you go. Unfortunately,
Okay.
Which leads me into another question. You talk about different riders that are available and that type of thing. Let's say you had somebody who did a lot of it, or here's one for you, or weddings, like the $500 wedding cake. What happens if you're delivering a wedding cake, somebody's wedding, God forbid you trip and fall, and there goes the cake. So they
Yep.
can't get the
haven't
would
had
that
that.
be-
That might be one that I, just because I have not had that experience where if somebody came back after you after the facts of that, you know, where it's you didn't fulfill a promise, that could very well, I could see something like that in a liability, you know, if they wanted to come back after you. Like I said, a product, but if you're in a tax, you know, for that event, I could see that falling underneath the liability. Be one of those where I just would want for me to get verified, you know, from our underwriter, but I don't see why that wouldn't be in that type of a scenario.
Yeah. Would you mind checking with the underwriter? That'd be great. I'm just
Yeah.
curious.
Oh yeah, I'll check that
Because
out.
Yeah, because I remember one time I didn't have anybody riding with me and I was delivering a cake to New Ulm and almost had somebody hit me and had a dart, and literally it was my birch cake that was all fondant and two tier, and I just remember like gasping, and then it was there and I just felt so relieved. So yeah.
Yeah, well, definitely. I can check on that.
And is it safe to assume that the policy is initiated at the time that you sign up for it, or is this a calendar year policy?
It's going to be sign up. So if you sign today, it's 12 months from today. So January is what, the 7th? Yep. January 7th, January 7th.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Does anybody have any more questions for him? So you can see in the chat his phone number if you want to write it down, 507-720-6466. So again, 507-720-6466. And then his email, because I don't have it memorized, it's John, I know that much.
I
At,
put it in the chat
I'm trying to find, so I have to look through my email.
there.
I
Hey.
feel like listening right now, my email has a lights on.
It's John at aiamankato.com. All right, John, you are officially Cottage Food Producers of Minnesota's insurance guy.
Hey, I appreciate
Yep.
answer any kind of questions you got. Feel free to reach out with any questions you have via email or phone as well.
Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, have a good week.
Yeah, we should ask you though, are you okay with being our official insurance agent of Minnesota? We
I
just
have-
kind of said you were gonna do it.
Of course.
You've been knighted.
It's an honor.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.